We're honored to hear next from Amber Eakin and Amy Diary. They'll have 20 minutes each with 5 minutes for Q&A. We have chat monitors, Michael Habata and Joy Hansen here to keep track of your questions. If you want to put them in the chat, you can just put a Q and then they'll be able to keep track of questions you might have for our presenters. We thank them for their time. And Matthew Chase will keep our time and let us know if we're nearing the end of our time. So I want to quickly introduce our presenters today. Amber Eakin is from Strayer University, Washington, D.C. Her pronouns are she, her. 2 years ago, Amber Eakin joined the University Library as primary information literacy instructor. And there's more information about her in the program. And we also have, as I mentioned, Amy Direeves from Texas Tech University, pronouns she, her, hers, with more information about Amy in the program as well. So with that, I will let them get started.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are. I am Amber Eakin, pronouns she, her, and I am with Strayer University. I will begin sharing my screen. Today, we are going to talk about virtually impossible building an instruction program through faculty partnerships. Now, Strayer University does have over 60 campuses across the United States. We are over 130 years old, but most of our students are taking classes online. We were over 90% virtual before the pandemic, and since the pandemic, we are almost exclusively in the virtual space. Most of our students are non-traditional, meaning that they are over 25, they're working students, and we've always focused on adult learners. I've been with the university for about 7 years in a few different capacities, but in April 2020, I joined the library team, and all of our instruction is virtual. So let's jump in. My agenda for today, I want to look at 4 different components of setting up the type of program that we use. First, we all need to understand Knoll's assumptions of andragogy. Then we'll talk about the steps that we took to build this robust program. First, we had to implement a system. We had to decide what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. Then we had to make those faculty partnerships. And of course, we always want to be sure that we are supporting accessibility so that we can maximize our reach to all of our students. I do want to note that I am monitoring the chat, and I love interaction and participation throughout these sessions. So if you have questions, I know that we're going to have that period, but you can also use those reactions, and I will actually request that you use those reactions a few times. And the first time that I'm going to ask you to use those reactions is right now. If you are familiar with Malcolm Knoll's assumptions of andragogy, I'd like you to use the reactions in your Zoom panel to give me a thumbs up. If this sounds new to you, please give me a surprise face. This type of interaction is helpful to me because it lets me know how much to explain. It helps me to scaffold the instruction. And this is also a strategy I use in my instruction sessions. Thank you so much. I see that a number of you are familiar, but the majority aren't yet. This is a huge underpinning of what we're doing at my institution. So I wanted to make sure that we took a little time to go through each of these components. I also want to note that Malcolm Knowles believed that the future of adult education was with libraries. He believed that learners would become self-paced and self-directed, and they would do that by working with their public librarians to find the information that they needed. The first assumption is that adult learners need to know why they should learn something. Andragogy differs from pedagogy because it is geared toward the unique learning needs of adults. Pedagogy refers to children. So whenever someone's discussing pedagogy, technically speaking, these are theories and strategies geared toward the K-12 space. When we're talking about adults, we're discussing andragogy, even if we're not calling it by that name. Adults want to know why they should learn something as opposed to taking it from an authority figure. The next assumption is that one's self-concept moves from dependency, like getting all of their information from an authority figure like a parent, guardian, or teacher, to self-directedness. This means that they want to become more independent. The third assumption is that their life experiences are invaluable and we can build on those as part of the learning experience. This again differs from children where most are in the same life place if they're within the same grade or age bracket. This wildly differs from adults who may be at different stages in their lives with their careers, their education, family life, other activities, and we can use that to make valuable connections. Fourth is that adults are going to learn because they want to advance their social roles, like social standing or their careers, by solving for real world problems. This is a critical component of andragogy. They want to be able to solve a problem. This relates to the fifth assumption, which is that information should be immediately applicable. This again differs from the way that we may think of education, which is just in case. We want students to know how to research, how to write, how to use proper citation formats, how to evaluate resources, just in case they need it. However, if we're looking at this from an andragogical perspective, we want to give students information or adults information for just-in-time learning. We don't want to teach with the assumption that they'll eventually be able to use it. This really harnesses this idea of meeting them where they are just in time. And the sixth is that motivation shifts from external pressure to the internal drive to learn more, to know more, and to solve those problems. Moving into implementing a system. At my institution, we don't have a full library course. We don't have an information literacy course, and we don't have embedded librarianship. We don't have librarians assigned to specific disciplines or within the classroom. Because of this, we wanted to tailor what's often called a one-shot session as single sessions for information literacy. While we do have university-wide sessions that we record with different skills that they may need to know, like how to use a database, how to create an outline, how to use Boolean operators, we wanted to partner with faculty members to tailor sessions. We know that students are going to be more invested in their education if it's coming from the individual who is teaching them, the person who is grading them on their assignments. We developed 4 different overarching session types. When we created these session types, we looked at what faculty were often requesting from us. And when we developed these, we used Bloom's taxonomy so that we could have a learning outcome to share with the faculty member. This helps them select the type of session that's appropriate for their needs. This often means that our one-shot turns into a series across the term. They're inviting us back for many things. For anyone who has ever done a one-shot before, you know that it's so difficult to squeeze everything about your library into a single session. It just doesn't work. Because of this, we created these 4. The first is a library overview, where students will be able to recognize the various library resources and list the ways to reach out to our team. Basic searching helps students find appropriate resources using our portal or a database. Our library is also overseeing the virtual writing center. So we have a writing support category where students will be able to identify different tools and services to support their writing, select the correct style and tone for the audience, and develop methods for overcoming writing blocks. And for assignment support, students will be able to develop an outline, select keywords from an assignment prompt, and compare databases to find appropriate resources. Faculty members know the needs of their students better than we do, and they can help using Knoll's assumptions, particularly 1, why they should learn it, and 4, solving a problem, which is often submitting an assignment. All of these session types last half an hour, with the exception of graduate level assignment support. We do have graduate learners, and they typically need a different type of support, or they might need to get a little more advanced into their synthesis. Those sessions are 45 minutes long. We found that students started to get a little overwhelmed when we took a full hour, and some things became redundant. This also helps us in making sure that the scope of the session really does stay within that learning objective. This helps us to make sure we stay on task, and it helps the faculty member to hone in exactly what they want us to cover. This is also why we often get invited back to discuss additional topics later. These events are entirely customized and tailored. When a faculty member books a session, and I'll talk about that system in a moment, we reach out to them and ask them, okay, we're going to be looking at a library overview, but what problem can we help you solve? What are some of the issues that you've seen with your students when it comes to using the library? We created an online form for this process. We use Microsoft Bookings because that's already part of the package that our university uses. In this form, we ask for, of course, the faculty member's contact information. They can select the session. This allows them to choose the day and the time that's appropriate for them. So it gives them the flexibility to choose when and what they need. It also helps us so that we're not having back and forth through email conversations of, well, I'd like the library to come present on this topic. What day? How about Thursday at 6 o'clock? Well, we're not available then, and going back and forth. So they really get to have that autonomy. We also considered using Microsoft Forms, but that wasn't as robust as we need. And if your institution uses Google, you might consider Google Forms. Whichever form you use, I would strongly encourage you to select something that has an Excel export option. We use these for future follow-up so that we can reach out to faculty members who've booked with us before to help market sessions for the upcoming term. The next step is getting connected to faculty. If you have subject librarians or discipline specific librarians, you may already have those connections. Because we are so dispersed across the country, we needed to get a bit creative in this case. Our first step is reaching out to faculty leadership. I want to ask you to use those reactions again. How many of you are familiar with your faculty leaders? If so, give me a thumbs up. If you wouldn't know who to contact, give me a surprise face. I am so excited to see all of those thumbs up. I do see some surprise faces, so I would so encourage you to find out who those leaders are. If you have a faculty senate, if there are deans over your colleges, figure out who they are because they can help market the events and champion your instruction program. You can put notices in newsletters if you have a faculty newsletter, and that will help build awareness. If you are fortunate enough to have personal connections with the faculty members, you can email them or visit them if you are in person. This will help to develop those connections, and it will help you with word of mouth about your program. Finally, you want to check in to confirm the student's needs. This helps with tracking your instruction, and it can also inform your reference and library guides or pathfinders. So this is a really important step. As always, accessibility is critical. When you are offering instruction, especially if you are doing so in a virtual or hybrid environment, you want to make sure that your sessions are able to reach as many students as possible. This means that you're going to use clear, plain language. When I say plain language, I mean that we need to move away from using unnecessary library jargon. We have specific terms that may be unfamiliar to students. Rather than forcing them to come to our level, we need to use information that makes sense to them. We don't want to waste valuable time in the instruction session explaining exactly what a Boolean operator is, why it's called that. We want them to know that just-in-time learning. When are they going to use and? When are they going to use or? That type of information. You also may want to consider offering your pronouns. This is not requisite, but it can help create an inclusive space and make students feel like they can share that with you as well. It's a little bit of vulnerability to offer, but it can go a long way. If you are using materials like a PowerPoint presentation or handouts, make sure that you're checking them for color and formatting for your low vision participants. I can't tell you how many times I have seen a PowerPoint presentation where someone is using a bright red on a bright green or some other sort of aesthetically disturbing color combination. You want to check those, and there are all sorts of resources online to help you with color compatibility or checking a PDF for accessibility or your documents. Finally, we record all of our virtual events. We know that students aren't always available to meet us when we're available for them. So we want to have those available to them. During our virtual events, we do offer live transcription. As you're experiencing with Zoom right now, there is live transcription available. If the type of product that you use doesn't give this option, Microsoft PowerPoint online does allow you to put captions at the bottom as you're speaking. A trick that I used to do is even if I was doing a demo in the library, I would shift my screen a little bit so that I could have the PowerPoint captions underneath. You might need to get creative, but it's so important. We also offer a post-event transcript, and you never know what the use case will be when it comes to this post-event transcript. Students might want to go back and find something that they used before, or perhaps the transcript is their primary way of engaging. Finally, share that recording link and other relevant materials with your participants. I often
5 minutes left.
Thank you. I often see people noting materials available upon request, or recording available upon request, accessible content available upon request. Don't create a barrier for your patrons. If this is something that you have and that you know anyone might want, make them available so that they can access it. It creates a much more accessible space. I want to thank you so much for your time and attention. I know that for some of you, it is early. For me, it is lunchtime. I wanted to offer, if you would like to reach out, please do so. I am more than happy to talk about the way that we structure our events using reactions like we have today. And I want to ask one last one. If you have learned something that you think you might want to apply, please give me a thumbs up. Yay. I am so glad to see that. I am so grateful to all of you for being here and to the fabulous LilyCon team for allowing me to share this with you. And I will open to whatever questions you may have.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. We have a little bit of time for questions before we move on to Amy's presentation. Any questions? So I love the way that you're calling IEL instruction an event. That's an exciting spin to it. I love that too.
Part of that was also because we learned that webinar was not a term that everyone was familiar with. We use this a lot in the academic space. You see it in the business space. And it occurred to me when I kept saying webinar over and over at my house, my husband is a mechanic, and he finally said, "What are you talking about? Why do you keep calling it that?" So that's also why we call it a virtual event.
Makes it more exciting to attend to. I'm like, I'll go to an event. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? Feel free to put in the chat or. Yeah, this is something I want to learn more about for sure. PowerPoint option. Here we've got a question. How do you deal with faculty that are not cooperative and are not responsive to offers for an IEL event?
Ooh. We don't often deal with uncooperative. What we typically find is a dubious nature. People are disbelieving into how it can be useful. So part of that is in working with the faculty leaders. If the faculty leaders are telling faculty that this is a valuable experience, that'll create some buy-in. What we found most useful is actually testimonials from other faculty members. We have a group of faculty members who love the sessions. They didn't know what they were getting into, but then they started to invite us. They invite us back. There's one faculty member who invites us in. She teaches 2 different courses. She invites us in 10 times throughout the term, and they have done more than we could ever. So if you create those faculty connections and they tell their peers how it helped their students, how it gave them better quality in their assignments, how they had to deal with fewer questions from students about how to use the library, that's your biggest resource, are other faculty members.
Okay. Got a couple more questions here. How do you capture the content for a transcript?
Ooh, that's a good question. We use Kaltura, which automatically creates a transcript. If you don't have software like that, if you're using Zoom and you use live transcription that will capture the transcript, which you can then download. Or you could use a third-party service like Otter AI. Otter AI is the underpinning for the Zoom transcription. With Otter AI, you can upload the audio from a recording, and it will create the transcript. So there are a lot of different ways to get that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of faculty say that they like that with their research too. In your online content and your online form for faculty, allowing them to choose the day and time, how do you align that with librarian calendars?
Because we use Microsoft Bookings, it automatically connects to the library team calendars. We have a set schedule. For us, it's Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. We do have a number of team members who work later in the evening, and we find that faculty want that 7 to 9 p.m. time. That's when we get the most. So it's connected to their calendars, and we have the setup for here's the only time that we are available.
Nice. We've got some comments here. Esther used to ask faculty what their students have trouble with. Jargon, maybe I should call the truncation symbol a star rather than asterisk. What do you think about that?
I love it. I love it. When we say, I think asterisks could be a little confusing. You could use star. It's kind of like how I grew up saying pound symbol and now we say hashtag. So, yeah, I like that idea.
Exactly.
Or shift 8. I see that comment too.
And a comment here about using SpringShare for scheduling. Nice.
Yep. If you use SpringShare for LibGuides, absolutely a great way, because I know that LibCal can also help you set up virtual sessions too.
Awesome. And just a reminder, if you don't feel comfortable asking your questions live, you can feel free to contact the presenters offline. Their names are posted on the conference program with their email. Other questions before we move on? Anything that the other moderators have caught that I did not? Called my translation, but call it wildcard search, yeah. And we've got some well-earned praise throughout the presentation as well. So we really appreciate you. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity so much. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.